It's also been targeted by the Trump administration for promoting what they're calling a liberal viewpoint. But the president's order to stop the station from receiving $12 million in federal funding appropriated by Congress was blocked by a judge last week. Proceeds from the sale of REM's 5-song EP will benefit the news organization. We do have the chance for some isolated showers later on today, mainly for areas of St. Johns, Putnam, and Flagler counties. Other than that, will be warm and mostly sunny today here in Northeast Florida. Highs will reach the mid to upper 80s this afternoon. Overnight, lows in the mid 50s inland, 60s towards the coast.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Pew Charitable Trusts, telling stories behind data and trends that shape our world today through its podcast, After the Fact. Learn more at pewtrusts.org/afterthefact.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a lawsuit is planned following allegations of jail mistreatment. We talk with the author of a new investigation into what happened and concerns about the thoroughness of the internal investigation that followed. Later in the program, the heads of Jacksport and the Riverkeeper are both recognized for excellence in public service. But first, I'm joined by Nichole Manna, senior investigative reporter at the Tributary. She's the author of a story published last week titled JSO Jailers Said She Had No Visible Injuries. Photos say otherwise. Nichole, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So you have been covering jail and healthcare related issues as part of your beat. You won an award last year for your reporting, so congratulations on that. How did you first learn about this particular incident?
We got it through a tip and just started asking questions and then digging deeper and filing public record requests.
And this stems from something that actually happened last year but has not previously been reported. What do we know about what happened?
So the story is about a woman named Allison Fierro. She was arrested last year in January on a suspected DUI, was brought down to the Duval County Jail. At some point within the booking process, she had a Zoom hearing with a judge who set her bond. And the story goes that she had asked for anxiety medication. She was feeling really anxious and wasn't getting that medication. And the tip that I had gotten was that at some point, officers there had taken her to the ground using a straight arm bar takedown. And she said that she was injured, that she felt essentially her face crack is how she put it. And she was booked in. She was there for 3 days and never received medical treatment. And when she was able to bond out, a friend who picked her up took her straight to Mayo Clinic because her face was so grossly bruised. And then when she got to Mayo Clinic, they alerted JSO because of the extensiveness of her injuries.
Yeah. And you published a photo with this story that we will put on the screen here for people who are watching online. But basically, it's a side-by-side. It shows the mugshot that she got when she was admitted and then what she looked like when she was photographed at the Mayo Clinic a
Yeah,
couple days later.
right.
And so for people who are not looking at this photo, which is very dramatic, describe to us what the difference, what do you see?
Yeah, so in her mugshot, there's no bruising to her face. There's no, I mean, her face just looks like a face, uninjured. And the photos that we got of her in the hospital were actually taken by JSO detectives who were sent to question her about what had happened. And we called them raccoon-like bruises. They're black, maroon, with some yellowing that go mostly across her left eye and then kind of like touch her right eye. And they're pretty big. They look like a mask.
And swelling and
Yeah,
sort of this kind of bruising underneath it and all around.
all around.
Yeah. And so the injuries were, alarming enough to this woman's friend that she drove her directly from the jail to the hospital. And then enough that the staff at the Mayo Clinic not only spoke to an on-duty officer at the clinic, but then also called 911. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. And so police were dispatched. That is kind of when the investigation began. And so will you describe to us what happens when there is an investigation that is being conducted by JSO that could have maybe a criminal
Mhm.
element, and kind of what happens with that part of the investigation?
Yeah, so from what we understand in this case, the on-duty officer went to her, saw the injuries, called up the chain and got what's called the integrity unit to go to the hospital. And that unit investigates potential criminal activity by JSO officers. So they went and they talked to her. She explained what happened, and I believe there was some sort of email communication within a few hours of that being then sent to internal affairs, because they found that there was no criminal action by the officer who took her to the ground. And Allison was never contacted by internal affairs. So the only time she got to tell her story to JSO was to the integrity detective at the hospital.
And do we know anything about the integrity investigation? I mean, how they look at something to determine that there was no criminal component to what happened?
It's really hard to say in this case because all I have is the documents saying that an investigation happened. And I just have a recording, an audio recording of her interview at the hospital. So I'm not sure exactly what the mentality was behind saying that there's no criminal action, why that decision was made. I just know that it at some point was forwarded to internal affairs, who did an interview with the sergeant and the two officers who were involved in this. The interviews with the two officers were about 4 minutes long, so very short. And the conclusion was that they didn't do anything wrong and they were not disciplined.
And so that was sort of the part of the investigation that goes to the internal. That's basically, is there a policy
Right.
violation as opposed to a criminal violation?
Right. And they determined that there was no policy violation.
And we should say we did reach out to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office on Friday, ahead of this segment, asking for comment. We haven't yet heard back, but we certainly will keep an eye on our email and our messages if that changes. Um, so, these incidents often come down to a question about whether an officer's actions were justified in the moment. Um, whether this woman was creating a commotion to the point that they felt that they had some sort of threat on their hands, whether they felt like they needed to do this takedown. And, as we said, there was no criminal component as determined by the integrity officers. So this comes down to a question of policy. And um, it's, the question of whether they behaved appropriately is a policy question in this case, but also what happened in the investigation. And that's one of the things that you focus on in large part in this story, is not necessarily whether in the moment that decision was right or wrong, but kind
Right.
of how thorough and whether the investigation was adequate.
Yeah, one thing that really stuck out to us is that there was no response to resistance form that was filled out by anybody at JSO, which I think in other departments it's called a use of force form. So that's kind of essentially what it is. If force is used, you're supposed to fill out this form. We have a copy of the use of force policy, which outlines pretty clearly when a form should be filled out, and it says when somebody is injured during force, it should be filled out. And then it describes what force is, and a takedown is described as force. And so the question we had was, why was that form not filled out, and why was there not any discipline because it wasn't filled out?
And it does sound from the interviews that you obtained of the officers that they basically said there was no blood, there was no injury that we were aware of. Whatever happened during that takedown, there was no visible sign that this woman had been badly injured, and therefore no need to file that response to resistance form, because that's required only if there's an injury that results.
Right. And I think we all kind of know too that bruises don't show up immediately. She was in the jail for another 3 days, and according to her, requested medical multiple times, and told people who check on the people who are being housed, and told them, my face didn't look like this when I came in. Can you please look at my mugshot? Like I'm hurt. Um, from what I understand, inmates have access to an iPad of sorts where they could put in medical requests. She said that she put in requests through that system. We filed a record request so that we could get copies of that, and that record request was denied. So,
And the basis for that, what is it? Because it's
because it's
medical.
medical and personal, and as you said, that there is a lawsuit that's going to be coming. So it'll be interesting if we could get that in discovery at some point.
But some of those records might also be harder to get because they could be litigated.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we were talking about a new report in the Tributary about a incident that happened at the jail and the investigation that followed. I'm talking to senior investigative reporter Nichole Manna. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. So the response from the sheriff's office in terms of what happened to um, Allison Fierro involved a letter actually from the sheriff. Can you explain what that said? What may have triggered that letter from the sheriff to her?
Yeah, so when you file a complaint against an officer and it is investigated by internal affairs, from what I understand from other stories we've done, it triggers a letter from the sheriff saying, "We've gotten your complaint, we're investigating this." And then usually when the investigation is finished, you get a letter that then says what the outcome of that investigation was. And in this case, she did get a letter from Sheriff TK Waters where he expressed regret that she, I think the word was, received the event unfavorably. So we got a copy of that letter too, which I believe that might have been sent to her before the investigation was completed as a, "We've received your complaint. We are looking into this."
And it's not clear that there's anything unusual about that letter where he
Right.
expressed regret that her experience was unfavorably perceived.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And so, was anyone disciplined in this incident?
No.
And is there any additional steps that could happen as far as you know in terms of discipline?
I don't know. That's a great question. I emailed JSO asking if they could send a comment or if I could ask them questions because that's a question I have is, now with this information and, kind of with everything going on in the jail related to healthcare, can they reopen this investigation? Can they look at it again? At least in terms of should this RTR report have been filled out? But I never got a response.
Do we know? I mean, she has said that she filed these on the iPad that they're given. That
Mhm.
she filed these medical notices of some kind.
Right.
Do we know for a fact that she did?
That's what she said,
Okay.
but because I couldn't get that record request, I don't know, and because JSO doesn't respond to my emails, asking questions, I don't know.
hmm So you also asked for video, and we know that the jail does have surveillance video in these areas. Particularly, this is kind of like the booking area where
Right.
this occurred, and so you've asked for that. Tell me about kind of what response you got to that request.
We got a response saying that the video had been recorded over. As from what I understand, videos are retained for a certain amount of time, and recorded over unless somebody has asked for it to be retained, like an attorney. Her attorney did request the same video and got a response back saying that the video had been retained. So we got two different responses, and I wish I knew why. I could only assume, but again, with JSO not being willing to talk to me and allowing me to ask these questions, I just don't know the answers.
But they indicated to you that it doesn't exist.
Right.
They indicated to the attorney that it's
That it
on
does.
hold.
Yeah, that it's on hold. And that I believe their response is usually you need a court order, which means, he needs to file the lawsuit and do whatever attorneys do in this situation.
hmm So, what have we do we understand about what she told officers when she felt injured?
So from her perspective, from her interview, she got very upset that she wasn't able to get her anxiety meds. She said that she got loud because the room itself was getting loud. The officer said that she was being uncooperative, that she was arguing. When you're done being booked, you are then walked to wherever you're going to be held, and they gave her a bedroll. And in their interviews, they said that she threw the bedroll down the hallway. And then from there, the officers' interviews actually kind of change a little bit. One says that she was flailing her arms around. Another one of the officers said that she actually threw something at her. Though the person who was interviewing didn't follow up to ask what was thrown at you, so we don't know. And Allison said that she was walking, and then suddenly her feet were out from under her. She was on the ground. She said out loud in that moment, my face cracked. I'm bleeding. Like, oh my God, I'm hurt. And then she was pulled up. I believe she said that she was handcuffed and then walked to her holding cell.
I do want to note we did just get an email from a JSO spokesman, Christian Hancock. This is in response to our request for a comment. He said, "This information has recently resurfaced and was brought to our attention. This incident was reported by Ms. Fierro at the time it occurred in early 2024, and an investigation was launched as a result. The investigation was concluded last year, and Ms. Fierro made aware of its findings upon conclusion." So, does that add anything to your understanding of this case?
No, I mean, that sounds about right. They did an investigation. It was closed.
And I'm guessing when he says this information has recently resurfaced, that's either the lawsuit or your reporting.
Right. When you file a lawsuit, my understanding is that you have to file intent. So you have to tell the agency or the person that you're suing that a lawsuit is coming. So it could be either that or a story.
hmm And as we said, bruising doesn't show up right away. If there was no visible blood at the time, and it doesn't appear that anybody says that there was visible blood, right? I
Right.
mean, um, what would be do you still would you still have issue with kind of the way that the investigation moved forward, or do you think that that the what you don't know about the investigation might be what you don't have yet in terms of
Right.
records?
I mean, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
So I we're just waiting for more records and just thought that this was an important story to tell people right now, especially knowing that a lawsuit is coming.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we will do more reporting when we hopefully learn more.
Right. So I want to ask you because, as I mentioned at the beginning, you've been doing a lot of reporting on jail health, healthcare. There was recently a story of a jail inmate that died in custody
Mhm.
following an incident. So, can you kind of catch us up to speed on where things are in terms of medical services at the jail? Some of that changed a lot after you began your reporting. Kind of
Yeah.
where we are today.
Yeah, so we did a story recently within the last month or so where we got copies of the jail inspection reports, which happen, I believe, yearly. And in those reports, we learned that when JSO changed their providers to NAFCare, NAFCare hired an additional 14 staff members, which included fully booking or fully staffing the booking area and other support help, some supervisors. And they also added, I believe it was 2 medical carts. So there has been through those reports some obvious improvements. I think anybody could argue that more staff is an improvement. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we don't really know much more than that.
hmm And all of this is, at a time when there's discussion about another jail, building another
Mhm.
facility. And there has been a lot of conversation around that proposal that has involved dealing with inmates in a different way, processing them in a different way, creating a special, kind of avenue for people who might be suffering from some sort of mental,
Mhm.
problems at the time they're booked, creating better medical facilities that are on site. Um, how closely have you been following, the jail proposal and whether some of those options might alleviate the problems that you've reported on?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was following closely that I haven't been able to much in the last 6 months, just 'cause so much other stuff has been happening.
Mhm.
But the jail currently doesn't have a full infirmary, which means that people aren't able to get very simple treatments. Like they can't get an IV. So if you are arrested on a DUI and you're extremely what's the word?
Dehydrated.
Dehydrated. Thank you. You can't get IV fluids there at the jail, so you have to be taken to the hospital. So there's a lot of intervention that the jail can't do right now. So some of the proposals with the new facility would be to have a full infirmary with a lot more beds that could treat people on site and quicker.
Mhm. And in terms of, drug use within the facility is kind of something else that you've looked at and has also been reported on because, there have been a number of instances where people appear to have had overdose deaths, something that
Yes.
you've reported on.
Yeah.
There was a suggestion that there might have been fentanyl involved in this recent inmate death, and then I think more recently some information that perhaps there was no fentanyl in his system.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah, I think that the family attorney has said, released a statement. This is Charles Faggart, who died, saying that he was not on fentanyl at the time. Um,
Yeah.
and
Oh, interesting.
So,
Yeah, okay, good to know.
um, but what do we know about the trafficking, the problem of drugs in jail?
Yeah, I did a report, I believe it was last year where I think it was 6 people had died over the time frame that we looked at, with fentanyl in their system. I can't go as far as saying that they died because of the fentanyl,
Mhm.
but they did have it in their system. We specifically looked at people who had been in the jail more than, 1, 2, 3 days, because that tells us that they got it within the facility. Recently, we've seen an attorney who has been charged with smuggling drugs in through legal paperwork. We saw a JSO staffer last year who was arrested for bringing drugs into the facility. And at that time, Sheriff Waters said, he was taking steps and measures to make sure that this stopped happening. And he didn't go into detail about what those were. That's pretty much, I think, caught up.
Couple of messages I'll just read here. One from Tom on Facebook. He says, "This is a pattern with both the jail and JSO as a whole. These excessive force complaints under Sheriff Waters are routinely denied with the blanket claim that no laws or rules were broken." Also, an anonymous message from a listener in Mandarin who said that he was physically assaulted during a Baker Act, had his hands tied behind his back, and was thrown to the ground. Says this happens all the time to minorities. The only reason the news is reporting this is because she's an affluent white female. I guess I just ask you to respond. I mean, I know you said that this came to you as a tip.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, kind of with everything we've been talking about, I only know what I know. I can only report what I know and what I'm told. So, I'm always asking people if this happens to you, if this happens to somebody you know, like, please let us know. I can never promise a story is going to come out of every single tip that we get. And that's with any topic whatsoever. But, alert your local news reporters. Doesn't have to be me. There's a lot of great reporters in this town. Let us know when these things are happening.
and you'll look into it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Nichole Manna, great work as usual. I appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Up next, a local teen gets statewide recognition for leadership and academic excellence. For the second year in a row, the Ed White chapter of the Northeast Florida Boys and Girls Club produced the Florida Youth of the Year. Here to tell us about it is Wyatt Parlett. He's the Vice President of Operations for Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Florida. Good morning, Wyatt.
Good morning.
We are also joined by this year's winner, Caleb, the Florida Youth of the Year 2025. Congratulations, Caleb.
Thank you so much.
And sitting right next to Caleb is Nico, who is the 2024 winner, who also went on to win the national, the regional, and then the national youth of the year. Welcome. Nice to meet you, Nico.
Nice to meet you as well. Good morning.
And congratulations also. So, Caleb, you are going to be graduating soon.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're going to be competing for regional youth of the year, which is kind of the next step after winning Florida Youth of the Year. Can you just tell us a little bit about the significance of this recognition to you personally?
Yes, ma'am. So to come from the Boys and Girls Club, I come from Edward H. White High School and actually be a friend of Nico's and see what he went through last year with the Youth of the Year competition to understand that Youth of the Year is the biggest program in my club. And we basically have an honor to be a Youth of the Year for my club, not only coming from Jacksonville, Florida, but represent the whole state of Florida and now going to Atlanta, Georgia, where it's actually the Boys and Girls Club headquarters to compete against 20 other states. It's such a surreal moment to understand where I come from and help to understand every youth, to teach them that your path doesn't define your future.
Tell us a little bit about your path. I mean, how did you get involved in the Boys and Girls Clubs in the first place?
So actually, if no one's ever heard Nico speak before, his speech, he talks about the barbershop program in our club, how he became a barber in our club. And I actually was one of those kids that got a haircut from him. Actually, my earliest memory, I was a ninth grader that didn't know about the Boys and Girls Club. I was very uncertain. And I didn't even know what was the Boys and Girls Club had to offer. But Nico said, come in the club, let me give you a haircut for free. He gave me a haircut, but it was bigger than the haircut. The barbershop program became like a room and an atmosphere where I found brotherhood, mentors, people like Mr. Starks, was the father figure in my life now, people like Nico, which is like a brotherhood. And me growing up as the only child, I never knew the power of community until I sat in those chairs.
That's great. And so, Nico, when you first reached out to Caleb, what were you thinking? Was it, this is a kid that could use some help, some participation? He just needs a haircut. Like, what was your
Well,
driving motive there?
well, to be honest, I was actually looking for like students to practice on, and most students had to ask their parents to get a haircut, and some weren't too sure because I didn't have my barber's license, and I was just a random student, also one of their peers. I'm only a grade like above Caleb, so like most students didn't want to get their haircut by me, but Speaking to Caleb, he was actually very open to getting a haircut, and we sat down and we just talked for hours because the haircut did take a couple of hours because I just started off, and we realized that we had a lot in common. We realized that we both were very driven. We have similar backgrounds. Like you said, if you heard my speech, we talked about like domestic violence and dealing with like finding like a father figure and stuff like that. And I feel like we both have similar problems that we had to overcome in life. And when he sat down in that chair, I spoke to Caleb and I was like, dude, like just keep going. Like your past does not define your future. Like I didn't really explain where I came from, but he explained where he came from, and I just saw myself in him. I was just like, your past does not define who you are. Keep going. Everything that you want will come to fruition if you keep trying. And now look at him, man. I'm so proud of him. Like it's so like full circle to be sitting here at this table with Mr. Wyatt, who I met first after doing a tour, and Caleb, who I met sitting in the barbershop where I ended up making a living for myself, and then I ended up actually become the National Youth of the Year because of interactions like that.
And it's an extraordinary story. Can you, for people who haven't heard your testimony, kind of like tell us how you got involved in the club in the first place, and then sort of why you got involved in the barbershop program too?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised in like Marietta, Awkward, like all around Georgia, and dealing with like domestic violence and stuff growing up. After I moved back to Jacksonville, it was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't want to be at home. I didn't feel at home. I didn't feel like I could be myself just because I felt like I always had to bite my tongue in order for the greater good of my family. But I'm coming to the Boys and Girls Club. Like I found a space where I could be myself, where I could grow, where I could feel like everybody around me had the best interest in mind for me. And that's why I joined the Boys and Girls Club. To be honest, I remember sitting in my leadership class, and we walked in to talk about the Boys and Girls Club and who we could become. And I was like, man, I just want to play video games because I heard they had a game room, and then she spoke about the barbershop and stuff like that. And at first, they didn't even have a barber in the barbershop. But after a couple conversations with her, she found out that I had a passion, or I just wanted to learn. I was so eager to learn how to cut hair, and she actually went and found a professional barber for me. Jake, if you're watching this, man, shout out to Jake, man. He was a very like a huge pillar in like my success as a student, and even my growth as a young man, growing into being the young man I am today. And sitting in that barbershop and learning how to cut hair was one of the best decisions I ever made. Like it created so many different connections that I never would have had. Like if I never was cutting hair, I probably would have never became like as close as with Caleb as I am, or even had the opportunity to grow in my Boys and Girls Club, because that became a place where students would just come and sit down and have conversations and get to know me as a person outside of everything that I was doing in school. And it just became a place where I wanted more students to come as well. Like hence why like bringing students into the barbershop and just having them like come and sit and get a free haircut. Like I just wanted more students to be involved in the great work that Boys and Girls Club was doing.
And so, have you given Caleb some advice as he's heading down this path now to be competing for first regional and then, fingers crossed, National Youth of the Year?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I mean, if everybody doesn't know, Caleb's also the seventh Mr. Ed White High School as well, and I was the sixth Mr. Ed White High School. So like
Oh
going through
wow!
that process before Youth of the Year, I saw the spark in him. Like he's always had it in him. Like I don't think anybody could take credit for who Caleb is today, because Caleb's just Caleb. Like you don't come across another Caleb. But seeing that potential in him, like during the pageant, and then going into Youth of the Year, I sat down with Jimmy last summer. I was like, dude, I know he's not like always in attendance because he's doing the pageant right now, but man, give him some time. Like Jimmy was like, if he comes in the summertime, I'll give him an opportunity to be Youth of the Year. And I look at him, man, like he won state, he's going to regionals, like
It's been a surreal moment.
exactly.
What is the competition involved for people who aren't familiar? How do you present? What do you do? How do you actually compete for this title?
So you compete from getting nominated from your club. So in my Boys and Girls Club, when we had a National Youth of the Year winner at every HY high school, everyone in the school was like, I want to be Youth of the Year. So our unit director, he makes sure that every kid in our club has the opportunity to be Youth of the Year. So go through a process. We have 3 essays and give a 3-minute speech about your Boys and Girls Club experience and what you've learned through the Boys and Girls Club. After that, you get judged. Then you get nominated to go on to the city level. So we have 59 clubs in the region. So we're Boys and Girls Club Northeast Florida. So then I competed in the city level against other clubs. Then I won the city level where I got judged again. The state level was a little different. I went against, I want to say 15 or 20 other states from around Florida. But this time you get judged twice. So the first round of interviews, you do your first round of interviews against the other 15 peers. Then the second day, they let you know if you made the Final Four. Then the Final Four this year was in Tallahassee during Advocacy Week in front of the whole United States Chamber in Tallahassee, and that's where we gave our speech at.
Wow, that must have been a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, but in my club, we kind of advocate for kids advocating for themselves. Like, actually, we have a Keystone Club group where we do many community service projects. Last week, we had an autism awareness walk for Autism Awareness Month, basically just advocating our Keystone Club, teaching young freshmen and sophomores, underclassmen about how to advocate and voice your opinion.
I feel like that is a big part in why you can go into these rooms and be confident in yourself, because we're already being taught to advocate for ourselves and become the leaders that we are today. Like when you get to the competition, you're not building. You're not really trying to add too much more to who you are as a person, but learning how to navigate in those spaces. And I feel like that's why Caleb has the confidence to go into the next level of competition and know that he has what it takes, or just know he's a very authentic person and he's capable.
And Nico, you're at Florida State University.
Yes, ma'am. Go
Yes.
Noles.
All right. And Caleb, you're going to be planning on going to
CAU, Clark Lane University.
that's right. Yeah, next year. And so in Atlanta.
Actually, this summer, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
starting early.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. What are you're going to be studying criminal justice? Is that?
So I'll be majoring in psychology with a minor in criminal justice, accomplishing my goal of being a U.S. attorney. So I'll actually be admitted this fall, but during the summer, starting June 22nd, I have an internship job with Google Scholars Academy. Shout out to Dr. Stacy Robertson at Clark Lane University. I'll be majoring, studying my major while also having a job with Google headquarters, working there while living on Clark Lane's campus.
So and after Clark Atlanta Law School is ultimately what you want to do.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Wyatt, I want to bring you in. Risk of overshadowing you here with these two stars. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the clubs in the first place.
Yeah, so I was going to study art education, and one of my classes was teaching in diverse populations. And I had to choose a volunteer location that was diverse. They gave us a list, and you could choose from any of the locations. And I had been to the Boys and Girls Club as a child. We did taekwondo at the club at the beach. So it was really the only one I recognized on the list. And so I chose it to volunteer at. And when my volunteer hours were done, I fell in love with the mission, the movement. I mean, when you see young people like Caleb and Nico, and it just gave me a place too to grow as an adult. So I started out as a part-time staff while I was in school, and did pretty much every position up till now, vice president of operations.
And obviously, these are some very impressive kids that you are able to work with, and I'm sure it's pretty inspiring. For people who aren't familiar with the mission of the clubs, though, I mean, what is the population that you are helping to bring in, and what kind of services do you offer?
Yeah, so we're working with the communities that need us most, with the families that need us most. So as Caleb said, 59 locations across Northeast Florida. So one of the big things is that we make sure every child that comes into the Boys and Girls Clubs has a meal. We feed them. We have academics, certified teachers are on site, making sure that they have all their academic needs met. And then we have enrichment. So Caleb had mentioned something like Keystone Club. Keystone Club is an enrichment program that provides leadership and entrepreneurial experiences for young people in the clubs. So anything from robotics to drones to youth leadership, sports and rec, that's our enrichment space, and that's where we really thrive. And so we want to make sure that the young people that come to our club are safe and they can learn and grow as young adults.
What is it that you think is, how would you attribute the fact that you've got these two recent winners from Ed White? It seems like an extraordinary kind of lightning strike.
So we had never won state before Nico. So, this was all new for us when Nico came. I remember I was at the state competition, and we were going nuts when Nico won state, and then we went to Atlanta for regional and national as well. And it was just an amazing experience. But it's these young people, right? We poured a lot into those leadership experiences. When you talk about something like the barbershop, that was new for us. So we sat our young people down and said, what do you want to see within your space? And we listened to them. So we started things like cosmetology and barbering and dance studios, and they have a photo lab now at Ed White. And we really just wanted to listen to them. So something like the barbershop was extremely important. So it is learning a trade, but it's also that kind of offline mentoring piece, right? So our barber can tell these young men how to go about life. Sometimes if we're saying it as staff members, that it hits a little different with the barber, and when we're all saying the same thing, it's really a really cool mentor space for our young men. And that's really, I think, the secret sauce is really just listening to our young people, giving them a sense of belonging, and really listening to what they want with inside of their Boys and Girls Club.
And I would guess that the kind of see it, be it. I mean, now that you've got a winner, you can, sort of, it's a great example that it's something that can be done, right, Caleb?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And so what is the actual shape of the next level of competition? Who do you go against in the regionals? How many people will you be competing against? Do you have sort of a different strategy, for lack of a better word, or is it just kind of like bringing your story to a different stage?
Yes, ma'am. So actually, we have our regional competition coming up June 12th, as our ceremony is, and conveniently in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'll be at for the summer. So actually now, I mentioned earlier how I went against 15 or 20 other cities. Now, since I'm representing state of Florida, I'll be going against states like state of Alabama, state of actual Georgia, and the states that are surrounding during the southeast region of America for Boys and Girls Club. So the competition, it does get harder, but coming from the club I come from, I have a great example of Nico and being having the brotherhood and friendship that we have. He kind of helps me understand that the practice that I've been going through, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes a permanent lifestyle and builds that confidence in you to be poised and walk in these rooms with confidence that, yeah, I've been through this, but I came too far to give up now. So even when I'm in these moments where I feel nervous or I'm having nerve wracking or I have anxiety attacks, I like to think of where I came from and understand that my past doesn't define me and I'm basically a generational anomaly, that I'm here for a reason. I have a purpose.
What advice are you giving him, Caleb, at this point? Or excuse me, Nico, at this point?
Well, I would like to say, like you said, if you could see it, you can be it. I remember my 10th grade year, my sister, she was a senior in high school. She actually she got second place at state at Youth of the Year, and I was like, wow, like that's my older sister. Like she went to Florida State as well. I followed her to Florida State, and just watching her go through that and watching how poised she was, and seeing how she gave so much glory to God, and singing the confidence that she had by giving glory to God. That's what I tell Caleb all the time. Like if it's going to happen, if it's written out for you, it'll happen. If it's not, it's not. You're going to be great regardless. You're going to Clark Atlanta University. You had a stellar year as a senior. Like you're like the face of almost the city. I like to think like Caleb he's been doing this big one. Like for real. Like in Jacksonville, he's really been the example of what you like, just being yourself. And that's the biggest part of Youth of the Year, being yourself and being able to go into these rooms and being authentically you without having to worry about anything else. Like that's the purpose of being the Youth of the Year.
Well, it is such a pleasure to meet both of you. Caleb, we wish you all the best
Thank
in the
you so
next round of
much.
competition. I'm sure you'll do terrific, and good luck at Clark Atlanta too.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Up next, the heads of Jacksport and the River Keeper are recognized for excellence at a time when public service in some sectors is under attack. Public servants locally are being rewarded. Here to tell us about the second annual Public Service Excellence Awards at the University of North Florida is Dr. Georgette Dumont, Associate Professor of Political Science and Public Administration at UNF. Good morning.
Good morning, Ann. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice to have you back, Dr. Dumont. So, your department introduced the inaugural Public Service Awards, Excellence Awards, to recognize people in this role. How did you decide on the winners for this year?
We have an MPA committee that selects who the winners are going to be. So last year it was those involved with the JEA, and this year we looked a little bit more inside to see what our graduates were doing and who out there are just making these wonderful, wonderful examples of what public servants do.
So, these are both graduates of UNF.
Yes.
Okay.
So of the Masters of Public Administration program in UNF.
Specifically. Okay.
Yes. So
Excellent.
it's one. Jimmy was 2003 and Robert was 2005, or the years are back, vice versa.
We should say Jimmy is Jimmy Orth,
Yes.
who's the executive director of the River Keeper, and Robert is Robert Peak, who is the chief commercial
officer. So his job is to get more business
at
into the
Jacksport.
port.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so, I mean, first of all, what does this award mean to the people that are giving it and to the people who are getting it?
Well, we want to make sure that we are recognizing those who are really going above and beyond for our community. Our recognition celebration is part of a National Public Service Recognition Week,
Mm-hmm.
and that is this week. It's always the first week of May, so across the country, we have organizations are celebrating public service at the federal, state, local, county levels. So we are out there recognizing the work that public servants do day in, day out. Most people don't really understand or don't get to appreciate the amount of work that these people do. You think about government and you think about the people who get elected. Well, the public servants are all those who have to implement all of the programs what the people who are elected, what they want to have done. So we need to have people implementing them. And that can be anything from meteorology at the national level and the larger pieces there, right down to wastewater treatment in your local community.
Yeah. And I mean, do you think people misunderstand the role of public servants? And as I mentioned, this is a time when certainly civil service has been, um, targeted for a lot of cuts
Yes.
and in fact, just sort of some negative thoughts and comments.
Yes, and yes, it is misunderstood. So a public servant is politically neutral. So they go in and their job is to be experts in what it is that they do, which is what they're there to serve the public. They implement policies whether they like them or not, because that is the policies of the elected officials, and the elected officials represent the voters.
Yeah. And so they're operating without their own agenda. They're operating basically at the directive of whoever is elected. And, there's different levels. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about federal civil service, but this is people who work in your own community, who work for the city
Yes.
or the beaches cities in your case.
Yes. So these are when we think about public servants, we think about police officers and fire, but we're not thinking about those who are helping to keep your parks clean, who are paving the roads, who are making sure that the water actually flows through the sewer system when you flush the toilet. Those are all public servants, and they are the unsung heroes of what really makes a community work well.
It's interesting that you gave this year's awards to Robert Peake at Jacksport and Jimmy Orth at Riverkeeper, because in some cases, those two have been kind of on the opposite sides
Yes,
of
they have.
a big issue, which was dredging. And in fact, there's been some litigation even over that. Was that a deliberate decision to kind of recognize these two sides in this very important discussion?
I don't know how deliberate it was, but I did note that I like that it can show that people are doing the best that they can for the community and be on the opposite sides of a similar issue, or the same issue. I thought it was cute that they're also on opposite sides of the river physically.
That's
So
right across from each other, in
yes,
fact, yeah.
but they were
Because Jimmy
both
works at JU, we should say,
yes,
and Jacksport's right across the river. Yeah.
right, and and they also had classes together when they were in the program, so they overlapped for about a year. So they knew each other already, and they are doing their best to work for the mission of the organizations that they serve.
You also recognize some folks that are not in the public sphere that are kind of part of the program, the Masters of Arts in International Affairs and Masters of Public Administration. So this is also recognizing additional folks at UNF.
Yes, so we're recognizing those who are excelling in the field, and then we're also recognizing those who are going into the field. So we awarded our undergraduates political science students with their awards, academic and research and service. The same thing for the Masters of Arts in International Affairs, the MAIA, and then the MPA program, the Masters of Public Administration, as well as the new inductees to Pi Alpha Alpha, which is the National Honor Society for Public Administration and Affairs.
Well, Georgette Dumont, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you catching us up on these awards.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Up next, a summer dance intensive that requires dancers to get moving now.
AEG presents Hauser, The Rebel is Back tour. The Croatian cellist brings his blend of classical, pop, and rock music to the St. Augustine Amphitheater on Sunday, May 18th at 8 p.m. Information at theamp.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Lawsuits involving strokes are complicated and require a special understanding of these life-changing events.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
Join us for Film at WJCT Studios on Wednesday, May 21st for a timeless night of music and film. It's a special screening of the jazz masterpiece, Jazz on a Summer's Day. Filmed at the 1958 Newport Jazz Festival, this beautifully restored classic features performances by Louis Armstrong, Thelonious Monk, Anita O'Day, and Mahalia Jackson. Join us Wednesday, May 21st. Doors open at 6:30, film at 7. Don't miss this night of jazz, soul, and cinematic history. Visit wjct.org/film for tickets.
Millions of healthy children didn't set foot in a classroom for more than a year during the COVID pandemic. In his new book, journalist David Zweig says those school closures may have done more harm than good. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
President Trump wants Congress to pass what he calls a big, beautiful bill. Its main goal, extending tax cuts implemented in his first administration. But Congress will have to find new ways to cut its own spending. But where and by how much? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, an upcoming dance intensive titled Shapeshift focuses on technique and transformation in contemporary and modern dance. Here to tell us about it is Winter Bosanko, co-director and instructor at the Jacksonville Dance Theater Summer Intensive. Good morning, Winter.
Good morning.
We're also joined by Jessica Planca. She is a company dancer and a summer intensive instructor at Jacksonville Dance Theater. Good morning, Jessica.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So, Jacksonville Dance Theater is the longest standing professional company, a modern dance company here in Jacksonville. It's actually contemporary modern dance, which is a funny thing. It's kind of like we're defining modern dance as sort of its own thing. So this is contemporary modern dance. Can you kind of explain what all that means?
Yes, I love that you started with that. That is a funny, a fun discourse in the dance world. Contemporary really does refer to what's happening right now in the world, but we do, especially in Jacksonville Dance Theater, we take from more classical modern dance styles. We are very Jose Limon styled, which back in its heyday, 100 years ago or so, that was really modern dance. That was what was modern at the time. So now we like to refer to it as contemporary modern because while we are using those styles, we are also adding our own flair or our own voices into those styles.
Don't you feel like 100 years ago they confused everybody by calling it modern art, modern dance?
Yeah.
And now we're all like,
It's still
yeah.
modern, but
And Jessica, this is a summer intensive. I know that that's the kind of thing you've attended. This is something you're also teaching. What is the value of a summer intensive for a dancer?
Well, Summer Intensive is really a place for a dancer or student to kind of recollect and reassess what they want to focus on, their technique, their artistry. And this intensive is really special because it allows the dancers to put a primary focus on composition, improvisation, choreography, contemporary modern dance. And so it just allows people to put a really more of a specific focus on something over the summer when they're not training with a studio or at school.
So this is a period where they've got a little bit of free time. And so how does it roll out? I mean, are they being instructed in dance moves? Are they being given advice about how to do better choreography? What is the instruction?
It's kind of a mixture. So they'll have technique classes for contemporary modern, but then they'll also be guided through their artistry with improvisation. They might be given things like prompts, going across the floor, or making their own choreography. We also have the opportunity for them to learn a little bit of the company repertoire, which is what I would learn as a company member. So they can have a chance to get to know what it's like inside JDT's choreography as well. And then they perform at the end of the intensive for a professionally lit show at the Wilson Center with FSCJ South Campus, which we're very lucky to be a partner with this summer.
Yeah, that's terrific. And so what are they going to be performing? Is that something that they kind of determine during the intensive, or is it a program that you all have them learn and perform?
a little bit of both. With our improvisational classes, they'll learn a prompt or they'll learn a fun game, sometimes a dance game, and they'll perform parts of that. But they'll also learn JDT repertory, so dances they may have seen. We have 2 annual shows at the Florida Theater each year. So if you've seen Jacksonville Dance Theater perform, you might come to this intensive and get to learn some of the choreography that you've seen, which is really excited, and then also perform. And then sometimes we bring in guest artists. We're bringing in Ebony Amos. She's a dance maker based out of Atlanta, currently living in Tennessee, and she might create something new. So you get a little bit of both. You get maybe some real time making, some JDT rep, and then maybe something brand new.
And the theme of this, as we said, is shapeshift. What is the significance of that theme?
Yeah, so shape is really referring to the body. That is how we express ourselves, right? Dancers use their body to create and move. And then shift is really referring to suggesting movement or change, really shape shift together, really embodying the rigorous training. So this intensive is 5 days. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. There are some breaks. You get a lunch break and little breaks in between. But really the idea is that you are attending this and you are maybe shifting your not only training, but maybe your artistic voice or your ideas about what dance is.
And it is intensive, as the name suggests. But it provides some close kind of individual feedback as opposed to maybe a larger setting. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's exciting. You might, our artistic director, Rebecca Levy, will be there. She'll be teaching, and you might get a little bit of more one-on-one time than you normally would. And, are you interested in starting your own dance company? She is the founder of JDT. She's a great resource to talk to about that.
So we said the time to get moving is now, and that's because registration is open, even though this doesn't start until July 28th. So where could people go to sign up?
They can go to jacksonvilledancetheater.org, and under workshops and classes, there's a registration button. Yeah, and it's happening. I don't know if we said July 28th to August 1st, and we're taking submissions now. So come
Excellent.
dance with us.
All right. Well, Winter Bosanko, Jessica Planca, good luck with the intensive, and thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And come see us at our show this weekend. Weave at May 10th at Florida Theater.
Oh, that's right. Weave, and it's at Florida Theater, May 10th. Excellent. Thank you for that. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have questions or comments, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.com.
First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Havana Jack's Cafe, serving Jacksonville for over 30 years with traditional Creole Cuban food made with fresh ingredients. Offering dine-in, carry-out, delivery, and catering. Menu and ordering at havanajacks.com.